Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am here with my wonderful co-host today, Sandy McKinney. How are you doing, Sandy?
Hi, Ben. I'm doing great. So excited to be here today.
Sandy, anytime I get to do a show with you, it is a good day. I'm so excited as well. You have a phenomenal cast of characters here with us today.
I do.
Sandy, what are we getting into today?
Today, we're really focusing on, and you can see these lovely people that have joining us as our guests today, and I'm going to introduce them here in a second. But today's session in our series today is really about our corporate, if you will, our corporate members in our industry. And so as we started to have dialogue, a lot of these individuals either came to me or I went to them and said, are you interested in chatting more about how corporate people can mentor other individuals that want to get into the corporate environment? And so each of the individual guests that we have today is really going to share not only about how they got into the corporate environment, but how they can help others. And it really comes down to what this whole program is about, Ben, and it's about having a serving heart and wanting to get back to this industry so this industry can thrive.
Sandy, I love it. This is amazing. I cannot wait to hear the advice from these folks. I love all these people so much. We've got a bunch of people tuning in as well. They're all coming on. Oh, this is great. Hit that like button right now if you're watching us from afar. Hit that like button. Please get in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you are, what you're up to. Give your company a shout out. Shout out anybody you want to on the panel as well today. And if you have questions for them, let us know. I'm going to go work the comments over here, and I'm going to let Sandy run the show because she's the smart one here today. Let's see. We got a couple comments coming in here real quick. I want to get some shout outs. Janina, so good to see you there, Janina. Awesome. We got Jenna Smith, go Sandy, Rob Zeitz checking in, Michelle Brescia. This is great. Stacy, what's up, Stacy? Katie, this is wonderful. Look at this group.
They're all coming in.
They really are. Stacy Huff, super producer Stacy in the house. Mike Falia from SoCal.
Hey,
this is great. Christina here. This is fantastic. We got, look at this. Erica Burton, Sue Bornhorst. If you have any questions, throw them in here. I will be bringing these in from time to time. Lizzie Beats, what's up?
Hey, Liz.
Jodi, this is great. The other Jodi. Mary O'Donnell. Rebecca Glatzhofer from Crowns in the house. Patricia from Brazil. What's up? We got Richard from London. John shouting out Tessa. It's great. Yeah. Jamie Massa from sunny Mississippi. Brian Smith from Chicagoland. Viva from the Netherlands. No, wait. From Greece.
Yeah.
Viva, do you have a work visa to be over there in Greece? What are you doing over there, Viva? Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. Sandy, you want to take it away and introduce us to our panel?
Yeah, I'd love. I'll just start from those that I could see on the screen here. Let me start with our first guest, Amy Spiker. Amy comes to us from the Eaton Corporation, and Amy is going to share with us some of the insights of not only how she started in this industry, but how she utilizes that and how she can really, if you will, mentor not just young professionals, but other corporate individuals that are newer into the environment on how to get some senior sponsorship on some programs. So we've talked about that. So Amy, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So excited.
And then I'm just going to go down. No offense, Vini, I'll keep you for last, but my friend Tessa Boone from the Ford Motor Company is joining us. She has been a regular guest on the show. She was the one that got us started on this, Ben, if you recall. She was the one that said, Sandy McKinney, you need to do something here. So thank you, my friend, Tessa Boone, who runs the Global Mobility Program for Ford Motor Company. And I know Tessa's got a lot to share today. So Tessa, welcome.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
We're excited to have you. And then Jodi Harris. Jodi's made a recent transition to Grant Thornton and leading their director of their immigration and global mobility program. And Jodi has a lot to share. She was one of the ones that put this idea in my head that said, I really want to work with individuals that want to if you will, advance their career or get into the corporate environment. So Jodi, thank you for that and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I feel very privileged to kind of be in this lovely little group here. Some people that I learn from and respect and kind of stalk on social media, if you will.
Isn't that the truth? And then last but not least, Vini, and I'm going to mess up your last name, but Valverde. So he said it was okay. His wife still can't pronounce it. So it's good enough. And we all know Vini, and Vini's been around for a long time and lives over in Portland and is previously with Nike and now with UPS. Vini, thanks so much. When I reached out to Vini, we really didn't know each other personally, but we know we've sat in similar rooms at the same time. So Vini, thanks for agreeing to this and thanks for joining on the show.
No, my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, let's start. So why don't we go, Tessa? Just because I know, my friend, we talked about a few things, and I know the last time you were on the show, you started by sharing how you got into the environment of mobility from the corporate environment. So maybe for just a couple minutes, share again how you transitioned from an HR position into mobility for us, if you don't mind.
I can do that, but I wasn't actually in an HR position. So,
sorry.
So I started with mobility at BMW, and I was hired into BMW to support the vice president of engineering, who was an expat, and I speak German, and so they thought that I would be able to help, in that engineering setting, using my language skills. And then had an opportunity to spend some time in Munich as the accompanying spouse, the trailing spouse. What a horrible thing to say. And so I lived in Munich for a time with my husband, who was also at BMW. And then when I came back, I applied for the position that was in mobility and said, I am bilingual. I can speak to the expats. I've been living that expat life. I'm familiar with it from the other side of the table. So let's give it a shot. And that is how I fell into mobility.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tessa. And I know, Jodi, from your perspective, why don't you share a little bit about how you got into our industry as well?
Like everybody else, I fell into it as well. Right. So I was, and I drove a forklift for a while. Got into training and development, and kind of went in random locations. But I got into training and development, and then moved into HR. Started to go back to school, and went into HR. And I asked around, I was finishing my degree, and I asked around and I said, so I'm looking to kind of move into an HR space, because I was just an executive assistant for also an engineering group. For a government contractor. And so they were like, well, we're opening up this space. We're opening up this team called Global Mobility Group. And I'm like, what's global mobility? And so they needed an admin in that group. So I started off as kind of an more like an HR coordinator type role. Entry level, getting my feet wet. And then 6 months later, they decided to give me all of the Middle East. And then the Iraq war happened. And so it was like, forget the pan, here's the fire.
No kidding. And the rest is history, right? As we say. So Amy, just quickly, and I do apologize, Tessa, I had my stories mixed up. I know Amy started in the HR world and she transitioned into global mobility. So why don't you share a little bit about how that transition took place for you, Amy?
Yeah, glad to do so. So yeah, my whole career has been in HR, and the first part of my career was moving to different HR positions, getting different experiences. I was relocating in some of those roles, so I got that experience as a relocating employee. I did a short-term assignment internationally, so I got that experience. I was working in the business, like as an HR business partner. I came to corporate for my first corporate role doing M&A HR. And I did that for a couple of years. I was and I still am part of the compensation team. And at that time, M&A was part of our team. And we did some reorganization of folks for developmental purposes. So the person who was doing mobility moved to a compensation role, and they asked me, would you do this? Would you be interested in doing mobility? And I thought, let me think about that. So I took the role, thought I would do it for a few years, learn it, and then I would move, back into another kind of more generalist HR role. But I fell in love with mobility. I've been doing it now for more than 10 years. So here I am, and just, really, it's funny how things happen, how we fall into those roles.
Exactly. Thanks, Amy. And Vini, I know you came from the service provider side of the industry. So tell us your journey on how you got into leading mobility programs for major corporations.
Yeah, so similar to Tessa, which I did not know, I was also that dreadful trailing spouse, right? The very high touch person that deals with the moving while the spouse is working. So it was 3 years in Naples, Italy. My wife was a Navy nurse. So during that process, I really wanted to get out of high tech. So when we returned back to the U.S. To Colorado, I wanted to get into the relocation business. So I was glad to, and happy to join a company, Grable, headquartered there. And that's how I started my career. And in about 3.5, 4 years later, I moved from the RMC to the corporate side and have been to the dark side. And have been.
We call it the other way.
Oh, sorry. And have been to the light side of the force for the past 11 years. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Ben, are there questions coming in here you'd like to ask?
We don't have any questions yet. However, we have actually a new rule that we just instituted on Love and Relo. When anyone says fell, fall, or falling, they have to take a shot. So a lot of us have fallen into the business. One of us has fell in love. So if you're falling, we will assist you with alcohol. So that is what we have so far. But anybody that has questions for Jodi, Vini, Amy, or Tessa, please let us know. But one common thread I'm hearing here, just an observation, it seems like folks are getting their opportunity to go mobility unbeknownst to them. They're like, hey, I think you might like this. What do you think about this? How many of you would you say, quick little poll, I don't want to say got suckered into it. I'm looking for a word here. But how many of you got, coerced into this or didn't really know what you were getting into versus intentionally kind of went into it and said, this is where I want to be? Just kind of question. Show of hands. How many of you got into it not knowing what
I had no idea what I was stepping into when I first came on board.
Okay. Half. Okay.
Yeah. I would think so.
How does it come? One follow-up question. Sorry, Sandy, but one follow-up question. Knowing that, how does it compare to what you thought it was?
I don't think I had any expectations necessarily. Like I said, I was in training and development. I went back to get my degree and wanted to move into HR space. And then kind of when I found that global mobility, and I'm a person, I love to learn. It's an obsession of mine. I love to learn. I love to learn new things, try new things, and I like to make things work better. I always ask, why are we doing this? I always look for opportunities to improve things, to make things smoother. And I was applying to that to a lot of, kind of HR and training and development and administrative functions at the time. And when I kind of got into global mobility, I was like, oh, I get to do all these things. I get to be like a jack of all trades, master of none, and it was something that was, like I said, it was constantly changing. So, going into a government contractor, you kind of had to learn all the government contracting rules. And then on top of that, then there was, this conflict, and all of a sudden we had to figure out how to get visas for people in a country that was in absolute chaos. And so, I put a scarf on my head and I went to the Iraq embassy and I said, how do we get visas? And so you started to learn that I liked the fact that I could just go to people and ask questions and just be a sponge and say, teach me what you know. And so I've kind of applied that throughout my career. I learn from everybody. I learn by listening to people. I reach out and say, hey, listen, how have you done this type of scenario? And I think that was kind of one of the things that I really loved about it. Right. And I was like, okay, I found my crazy, chaotic place, someplace where my weirdness can be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would echo a lot of the things that Jodi said, and I love the complexity of it. I mean, I knew there was a lot to it that I needed to learn, but I'm learning. I love the learning aspect. I love the complexity every day, every single day. I'm still learning even after doing it for this long. So it's very interesting to kind of find that really good fit for you.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we've got comments coming in here as well,
okay.
too, and I'm just going to give those just a moment here. Shout out to Kathleen, Laura, Sue saying mobility is like Hotel California. You can try to check out, but you can never leave. Yeah,
Amen.
that's great. That's great.
True.
Chris is doing a census over here. This is great. Brian's appreciating the stories. Patricia clarifies dark is the vendor side, where she went just now. She went to the dark side, so she is the Darth Vader of Brazil at this point. That's great.
It's all perspective, right?
Richard's not falling through. Oh, wait, he's got a drink. Randy Wilson was born into it. Yep. There's some of those. Born into it.
True.
And then Brian's got a question. It says, great long careers, and Brian's on the corporate side now, and he came from the supplier side, background. He asked, did you feel you weren't progressing at the pace you wanted? Or let me rephrase, maybe, have you ever felt like you weren't progressing at the pace you wanted, and what did you do about it? Vinny, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, gosh. Thanks, man.
That's what friends are for, buddy.
I think yes. I think progression it really depends on the size and the type of the company. I do, Brian, I do think that, when I was at my, not like 2 companies ago, right, I did feel that I wasn't progressing. And I think that's why I made the move to join my previous company, and also not just because of what I thought, is really what I wanted to make myself a better mobility professional, and having that small mobility program and have that also very large mobility program. So that was more on.
Fascinating point, Vinny. A real mic drop moment.
He's on his cell phone.
He's trying.
And it's coming. There we go. Sorry about that. It's been rocking. Okay. But more on what I needed for personal and professional growth, and that's why I did that. So, yeah, that's my answer, Brian.
Thank you, Vinny. Does this question speak to anyone else who's felt this way?
I thought so, Tessa. Yeah.
Yeah, I had spent 15 years with BMW, and knew that there wasn't anything else for me there. And as hard as that was, after 15 years, and I had moved my way into various things and grew my own job in a way, I just knew that it was time. And I'm really pleased with the move, that I've made. I've been with Ford now for 7 years. So, and continue to grow that and continue to expand and, make my own way within the role. So it's not even necessarily that it's, it isn't the same, right? To Amy's point, it isn't the same. There's complexity. You're learning new things. You're trying to improve. You're always trying to find that next level improvement, that next excellent customer experience, that next thing. And so it doesn't even have to be that you are progressing upward. It's somehow outward as well.
Yeah, it's a great story. Thank you, Tessa.
Well,
Where did you go ahead, Sandy, please?
Yeah, if I could add something there, Ben, as far as like, not only weren't you progressing in your roles and the pace that, but I would ask if you could really give a piece of advice to a young professional, either in a similar spot. So Vini, like if someone's in the RMC or something in the supply chain, or Amy, if somebody's in HR, or Jodi and Tessa, if somebody's in just a position that you feel that there's growth there, how would you advise this young professional? What are some of the things I could do to make myself more exposed to the individuals that are making those decisions? Amy, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think it's important to broaden your experience. So there's not one path, especially if you're talking about global mobility. There's a lot of different ways you can get there. There's not one path, but I think a lot of times the experience is broad. So you have all those various experiences to draw from. So I would say yes. So if somebody asks you to do something new, even if you don't know if you can do it or not, say yes to it. I mean, some of the best experiences I've ever gotten, I thought, I don't know if I have the time, or I don't know how to do that, but some of those can be the best experiences that you can get. So I would say yes, look, raise opportunities. Like Jodi and Tessa were both saying, like they are, identify process improvement opportunities or implement new things. I mean, that helps us to grow as individuals as we're, growing our expertise and knowledge, and it also helps the organizations that we're working with. So those are some things that I would definitely throw out there to recommend.
That's great. Jodi, what about you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vini.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna quick say, I think the one thing that I would recommend is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There will be so much that you will need to learn, and like Jodi mentioned, we are not masters of everything, but we know who to go get that expertise, and I think that's where it's okay to be uncomfortable, but go and seek that knowledge, be a learner, and that's regardless if you are on the service provider, or the corporate side. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I did similarly. I would agree with both Amy and Vini in that one, don't say no to anything. Just say, I'll give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is you fail, and failure is okay. Failure still means you learned something. You're not going to be perfect right off the bat. You're not going to know everything. And just be curious, ask questions, reach out and network. One of the things I love about this industry is first of all, y'all are huggers, and that I have trouble with, but just in general,
even pre-pandemic, Jodi was
right.
Jodi
Exactly.
was
I need the shirt. Yeah. But anyway, aside from that, everybody's so friendly. And they're absolutely willing to talk to you. And it's the same way. It's just reach out and say, hey, I got a random question. Start getting on LinkedIn groups and reach out to people. And some of those LinkedIn groups are great, especially we have kind of a couple of them that are set aside for corporate folks. And you can just ask questions like, hey, I'm experiencing this. Who's done this? And that's a great learning opportunity. And all of a sudden you can connect with someone and realize, oh, wait, we're going through the same thing. And and bounce ideas off of each other. So everybody is just really open and willing to share their experiences. And it does not matter the level you're in. Thank you, Michael. Yes. It does not matter the level that you're in. Everyone can learn something. Everyone can teach something. And that, I think, is just one of the most fantastic things. I learn from people every day. I learn from people who are brand new to the industry because they're coming in with lenses that are not like tuned to the insanity that is mobility. They're coming in with like technology lens, or they're coming in with an HR lens, and they've got a different kind of focus on that. And so I learn from different perspectives all the time, different perspectives from people across the world, and different perspectives from where they are in their career and where they came from, and all of those things. Everybody can learn, everybody can teach.
I agree.
I have one question along this line, and I promise I'm gonna stop asking questions. We got a million great questions in the comments, and they're amazing. But was there one? Do any of you have maybe one project that you did? You're talking about saying yes, saying projects, taking on responsibilities. One project where you felt like it was a real leveling up experience for you, and if so, what was that project?
Tessa, go ahead.
I was responsible I raised my hand. Be a hand raiser, okay? It's not even about saying yes. It's about asking to be, for that opportunity. And I raised my hand and had responsibility for a group move, a big group move. And those are intense. And that was really early in my career. And we just onboarded like a darn assembly line. I mean, it was crazy town. They were just coming in, and had to take care of all kinds of things at all hours of the day and night. Mm-hmm. And it was great. It was great learning. It was great hands-on, operational, in the weeds learning, which I still now can draw on. And I don't have anything to do with that side of the house anymore directly, right? What I do is very different, but that was fantastic to really have responsibility for that.
I love that, because it sounds like you were really critical to the success of a major strategic initiative that they were trying to pull off, and you were kind of a linchpin in that process.
It was not seen as a strategic initiative then. This was just it was hands-on, right? So I love that you're calling it a strategic initiative. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is what we do on the show. We really dress it up, Tessa. So if you could just go with that'd be great.
I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile with that.
The magic. The magic of television.
This was so hands-on, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity.
Does anybody else? I saw a couple other nodding faces. Was there one project that you said, gosh, this one really catapulted me, or built skills, or got me in front of the right people, or something that I did?
Well, I know, Amy, you and I shared recently, you were on one of the educational, and I have to call out, all four of you are so giving of your time and expertise on the education of this industry. So thank you for that. And you all participate on a national, international level, as well as local, regional groups. So thank you for that. But Amy, I know we talked not too long ago about your initiative with the repayment agreement that you recently put into play with Eaton. And as a result of that, how you gained senior sponsorship on that. So why don't you share a couple minutes on that, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah. And I think, especially thinking back throughout my career in mobility, those big projects where you are making a big change, you're getting a lot of visibility, you're having to get into the nuts and bolts, as Tessa was saying, those are all really important. This is a more recent example, but we had a repayment process. We looked at, I had ideas for a few years about how we could really improve that. And the time was right, really just looking for the right time with the right resources, the right culturally, that it was a good time for us to make the change, and just sharing. And we do a lot of socializing at Eaton. So just making sure people were aware, getting input from all kinds of stakeholders across the organization. It was really truly a cross-functional project. So I think making sure people were aware of what was happening, getting the input was really, it's a lot of work, but it was really important to get buy-in. And we did have success with that project. And later we're able to, we wouldn't normally be going directly to the CEO, but we had the opportunity through an award process once we had implemented to get that exposure at the senior leadership level. So that was pretty unique because I get a lot of exposure outside of that, but that was really nice, a very unusual opportunity. So
Yeah,
it was a great experience.
I agree.
We got some really great questions here too. Can we take a couple questions from the audience, Sandy?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see who's checking in with some great ones here. I'm going to try to go in order here of these amazing questions. This is let's see here. All right, here we're going to go in order here. Viva, no bad or good side, Vini, of mobility. I believe that is essential that both corporate accounts, RMCs, and suppliers work together on an equal base to create a bright future together. It helps that there is knowledge from the supplier side on the corporate side and vice versa.
Yes.
You're not allowed to agree with Viva, which is the most important of the three legs of the stool here. Is it the suppliers, the RMCs, or the corporates? And go.
It's the vice versa.
It only works when it's all together. It really
Yin and
works.
yang.
Yeah. It
that's
really is. It really is a collaborative. It has to be. It's a partnership. It's wonderful. The learning that's there, the sharing, the building, the growing together. It's important.
Since this is about mentorship, let's flip this question just a little bit. What is the best way to leverage your suppliers and RMC to gain skills, to gain mentor-like? Let's keep it in that mentor. What's the best way to leverage them? Any tips or tricks or advice out there for corporate folks? This is what happens when we don't prepare the questions.
I would say they have experience working with all kinds of clients, similar, different, and wow, there's a lot of knowledge there. So I would just say ask because they probably have experience with it, and can give you ideas, and they maybe have people that have done it before. So definitely drawing on the breadth of clients and experiences that the RMCs have, and some other suppliers too. I think especially early on in my mobility journey, there were suppliers that were maybe I didn't expect were going to be able to help me more broadly. So there's a lot of them are willing to share information. So just leveraging not just your suppliers, but other suppliers that you might, network with or become friends with. They're just always willing to share. So there's a lot of great learning opportunities out there.
Yeah, I completely agree, Amy. And I think the one thing, and probably a lot of my friends in the industry are service providers. And what I've been doing, and this is just personally for the last month at my new company, is I've been meeting with every single service provider partner that has ever touched a UPS. And that is something that it is blocking my calendar. It is keeping me busy, but I think it's very important to have that open line of communication between the corporate and the partner, direct, that they feel comfortable with coming to me and in our team with questions, with concerns, with recommendations, and we feel the same going directly to them. And always being open to, meet new providers, set up a little bit of time to get to know a new company. You never know when there's a service out there that may help you in your company and your employees, and that you're not aware of.
These are great answers.
And if I could interject,
go ahead, Sandy, please.
One thing, sure. Yes. I would flip that question one other way. And I know I've talked to some of you about this is, from the service side of the industry to the corporate, how many of your counterparts in yourselves have been mentors of ours? And as a result of that, not only Amy and Vini, checking in with your suppliers on how they can help you, but, I know, Tessa, you talked about a group move and how that was such grassroots foundation of who you are today, and you can still lean on those learnings as of today. I remember when I started in this industry years ago, the same thing happened, but I had a corporate client who took me under her wing, and we really blossomed together in that environment of a huge group move, thousands and thousands of people. And I learned so much that I was able to grow. So what is your feeling? I know, Tessa, we've talked about this because a lot of people reach out to you. Obviously, you're our customers, right? You're our prospects. So let's put the white elephant out on the table here and say, what is your feeling? And Tessa, why don't I start with you? Because you and I talked about this. What is your feeling about people reaching out to you in that regard? If it's to try to sell or if it's trying to mentor, what's your feeling on that? Why don't we share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and we have talked about this before, Sandy. I get a lot of people who reach out either on LinkedIn or they get me, on my work email. And, when can we meet next week? And when do you have 30 minutes for me? And I really want to share this. And I think, okay, right. And I can't meet with everyone, but I do meet with people. I do try. And for me, it's about making those connections. Like Vini said, it's about expanding my network. It's about reaching out to learn about what organizations.
Stop it.
No.
I've been at my company 1 week. I don't even know my email, and I've gotten 2 people reaching out to me.
It got leaked.
It's the same way. I've been here for a month, and
they'll find you. They will.
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, there's a couple of things that I take into consideration when it comes to reach outs. One, what's the value add? What's the gain? For both me and the other organization. If I am potentially looking at something I keep a long time frame. If I'm looking at something in the next 2-3 years, then absolutely I'll start kind of reaching out or accepting reach outs to really make some adjustments or to consider other options or vendor connections, things like that. It also depends on my timing. Like, there have been jobs where I've worn 3 or 5 or 12 different hats and just had no time to breathe, much less like take extra time out of my day that I needed to do my regular day job to have meetings with vendors. And I'm sorry for that. That's kind of one of the main reasons for a recent move. But the other thing is I also consider, like, what am I trying to accomplish? If I am really wanting to learn something new about a different piece or work with a team, potentially learn, because global mobility can be the same. You're still moving people around the world. They're still dealing with visas and immigration. You're still moving people around the world. There's still logistics around all of those things. But the industries that we support, the, culture of the organizations that we're working in, that's what changes. And so we modify policies and processes and, what we do to support that piece, to support the goals of the organization, to support the culture of the organization. Sometimes it means outsourcing everything. And so I'll be reaching out to some vendors and say, what do you do with your other clients? I need to do this. I need to figure out how to get somebody else to do it. What do you do with your other clients? Other times it's, I might be reaching out to corporate people and saying, I need, I've got this scenario and, this is something I need to figure out how to learn. So, Shannon, only if you wear a banana costume, Shannon, because Anyway, so yeah, it really depends on kind of what the goals are. I do reach out. I do listen to people. I do try to take time to learn from people. This is why I've missed conferences. Haven't missed the hugs. Have missed the have missed the talking to people. Have missed the learning opportunities. Have missed the networking, the learning from people, all of those things. So I've been kind of stalking people on social media. I've also been listening to a lot of webinars and things like that, trying to keep up my learning opportunities. And within that consideration, but it really depends when it comes to reach outs. It depends on what my goals are and also how they approach it. Because if you approach it like a used car salesman, pretty sure it's going to be delete.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But that's, you have the opportunities. I loved what you said. And Tessa, you and I talked about the get to the yes, and getting to the yes means not only bringing value, but also being in a position when we were together that we can network and make a connection. And then at that point, we can maybe be mentored by you all. So Amy, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, to build on what you're saying, the relationship is really important. So those suppliers that reach out, that are able to make that connection and build a relationship, and then we continue it on, it's important. I think Tessa was saying, the kind of the give and the take. Jodi was saying, it depends on like what learning something new. That person that you meet with might be able to learn about what's important to you or what you're working on, and make a connection with another supplier at their, another person at their company, or maybe another corporate contact who's already done it, or maybe is getting ready to do it too. So there's, always the importance of making that connection with that person, but then also that ability to then leverage relationships that they have with others as well.
Yeah, and I think adding to Amy, and I think this is something that, maybe some of the people know or maybe don't, but it's, if it doesn't work for us to partner with our company, right? It doesn't mean that we cannot pass the good word about something innovative to another corporate person. We do talk a lot between each other, ourselves. We do have a lot of
we talk about you behind your back.
We talk good and bad about all of you, but
the dark and the light again.
But that's the thing. If you're, if you take the time to learn about the company and come with a value proposition, that is when it will trigger us to keep that conversation going, and not be, the copy and paste. I'm not ready to make a change in our program. Let's talk in 6 months.
Right. Right.
I've also taken the opportunity for different team members. So one of the things is that sometimes you come from random locations. HR is a great example. And you take an opportunity, and I need someone temporarily within the HR operations team or some, a team similar to that to help out on a project. And what I'll do is I'll leverage the vendors, and I'll be like, you guys need to put together like a 1-day immersion program for someone in HR on global mobility, because I don't necessarily always have the time to do the real detailed immersion programs, or, hey, this is your global mobility 101. I encourage people to take the CRP and the GMS. I missed out on that, on my opportunity to do that. I'm sorry for that, but and so when it's someone new kind of coming into the industry or helping out, and I really want them to understand the foundational elements, I will leverage vendors, whether they're my vendors or vendors that we have kind of a peripheral relationship with, saying, hey, who's got a mobility 101 type course that someone on the team can take advantage of. So those are great opportunities to try to get new people immersed into, let them enter Hotel California, and then they won't want to leave, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that mentoring is great to especially for your team, and it's like also tap into your partners and tell them to come and present to your team and do, like a lunch and learn for, let's say about mortgage lenders, about corporate housing, about household goods, all of the different aspects. Bring payroll, bring compensation. That's something that we can tap our partners to do it as well. And I know I do it.
And Ben, you had a question there as far as that last question you had up there.
I've got with Elena here.
Yeah.
The compensation.
My question.
As far as
the
salary
Elena,
survey. Yeah.
Yeah. So I put it out there, and Elena made it sound better. But I said, who pays the best? RMC, supplier, or corporate? I mean, we go to work to make money. I mean, I think most of us get paid, right? Except me, who hosts a podcast for nothing. But everybody else here gets paid, and so I mean, I and it's kind of a crass conversation, but Elena dresses it up. Good question, Ben. Has anyone done a salary survey of our industry? It is helpful data to have for organizations who are not familiar with global mobility professionals. It's funny, we sit in Comp and Ben a lot of times, or total rewards, but we don't really, I've never heard anybody talk about this.
This is the person you need. Sorry, I'm trying to point in the right direction and it's the opposite. But I really do think you need to ask like the comp person who has some experience in compensation, because compensation is not an easy thing. A lot of different organizations do different salary surveys to determine their compensation ranges and levels. And what's funny is that for those of us, and I imagine that Vini can attest to this, but some of us have kind of gone back and forth between the corporate side and the vendor side. And I was on the corporate side, and I went to the vendor side for a good year. It wasn't a good fit with the organization. It's not necessarily that it was the vendor side completely, but I do acknowledge the fact that I tell people what to do more than take orders. So I do need to work on that kind of processing and how I can be more consultative. But for me, moving back and forth, it was a big shift in base pay. But it also taught me, just from a personal perspective, women have a more difficult time with this than men do, but ask for what you're worth. And sometimes that's a little bit of a jump from what you were making before. But the worst thing they can say is no, and then you can negotiate. But always ask for what you're worth. And you can do some online salary surveys, things like that. But I would say, compensation is very individual and industry specific. Like your manufacturers might not pay as much as your tech industries and things like that. And it will depend on your degree and where they put mobility, especially on the corporate side. It's like, where do they put mobility? Is it a manager role? Is it a professional role? Is it an experienced professional role? Things like that. It's where they put mobility in HR that kind of defines what you make. Do they align it with an HR business partner, or do they align it with like an ops person who's just doing administrative work?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great point.
That's a really great point, and I guess that actually lends itself to another question, actually. And Olivia's shouting out here, ask for what you're worth, love it, totally agree. It's hard. It's hard to do sometimes. But then Christina brings up a great question here along that line as well, asking about career pathing, right? And in working your way up the levels of the organization. And she says, on the supplier side, there's really no upward career path. I would disagree with that, Christina. I mean, we have coordinators to vice presidents and beyond, and entrepreneurs. But she said, do you find the same on the corporate side if you want to remain solely in a mobility function without taking on other more HR responsibilities? Yeah. How do you get up the ladder?
Move organizations.
I'm sorry, what was that? One at a time, they're both great. What was it?
I said, that's a darn good question.
Oh.
It is.
Yeah, because you see mobility has a VP title at one company, it has a associate or coordinator, whatever. I mean, yeah, you see all. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's and Sandy and I talked a little bit about this, in preparation for our time today. Within most companies, mobility is very small. It's a very small portion. So the vast majority of companies will have 10 domestic relocations a year and maybe one expat, or 5 expats and 25 domestic, very small, very small. It's really rare to have a company that has mobility as a team, that has dedicated staff for mobility only. So my job, that's all I do is mobility. And I have a team of people who report to me, and that's all they do is mobility. That's super rare. There aren't that many. There aren't that many companies. So when you look across for corporate opportunities, 99% of those corporate opportunities is going to be an HR person or a comp person or an immigration person who happens to take on a little mobility, right? Mm-hmm. Or because it's not going to be solely a mobility person. And so, yes, you definitely are taking on often other functions and combining that with mobility. Especially, well, even in those companies, but especially for roles like if I were to climb, I would absolutely need to take on other things, right? Because there is, right, mobility as itself, my boss has other things that he is responsible for. Mobility is a piece of his role, right? So, so you have to consider that too. As far as corporate opportunities, you should absolutely be open to taking on that mobility, even if it's just a little bit of mobility.
That's such good advice, Tessa. I want to stay there just for a moment because you identified something about if you want to move up, it really helps when you have more direct reports and more stuff. And you talked about you have a team. I know some of you have teams, some of you may not. I'm not exactly sure, so I apologize. How do you get a team and how do you grow a team? Because it seems like the trend goes the other way.
Yeah, so let me comment on that, because I've had several roles in recent years and months and things like that. Years, a lot of years, where I might have had someone, they consider it like a 0.5 FTE or something like that, where you kind of had a percentage of someone's time that worked on mobility or worked on immigration or worked on the work that you kind of supported. And so you didn't have a direct report. They reported to somebody else. But some of their work came from you. And I just want to reflect from a managerial perspective. You might have manager in your title, you might not, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're not guiding the work of people within other teams or within a larger team. With mobility, you have the opportunity to kind of manage without managing in many cases. And so that doesn't mean that you're not managing. You are. Are you considered a dotted line or a direct line? It really depends on the organization and how things are structured from a corporate perspective. So I've had different scenarios. Most recently, I did choose to move to a company that had a dedicated mobility team. I kind of have done, I was queen of very long job titles at my former company. And, so I was doing disability for all of the United States and all of Canada. And then they had the wellness for all of the United States. And then they decided to add a global well-being program and things like that. So it was like, I felt like I was taking off one head and putting on another, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can still work with people and kind of manage the work and learn from them and teach them at the same time. You don't necessarily have to be a manager to manage people. And one of the things, I'll be honest, Grant Thornton, this is one of the kickers as to why I ended up selecting this company, because I had several offers. I chose Grant Thornton because my manager is not called my manager. They're called my coach. And I loved that from a culture perspective. I was like, that is really cool. And so I am still immersing myself in the culture and still learning about my new company and about what makes them tick and what their priorities are and things like that, and learning about the mobility program. But that key piece where your manager is not your manager is your coach. I thought that was just such an awesome feature, and that was what clinched it. You know, the person who would be my manager is actually my coach. I'd met her. She's fabulous. And so I was just really excited to kind of learn from her. And it might mean that I end up going out to something different, taking more HR roles, taking more different responsibilities. That's fine. I'm like open for anything at this point. You know, mobility and immigration is always going to be kind of my first true love, because it's just chaos and crazy, and I love it, and it changes every day. But you know, it really is. But it might be something, a portion of what I do. I've done HR M&A. I've done a little bit of comp. I'm not good with numbers, so I left the comp to the comp people. But yeah, that was, you know, you have to be willing to kind of take on new things, even if it means kind of leaving the area where you've found your niche and your love.
Well, and I love that transition, because we are coming to the top of the hour here, Ben. I love the transition. And Amy, why don't I ask you first, just kind of wrapping it up here. And I love the fact, Jodi, you said, she's my coach. And I love that. And all of you have raised your hand and said, you know, get to a yes, that yes, we want to mentor folks. So Amy, why is that important to you? Why is it important to give that back?
I mean, this is such a great industry, and I think all of us touched on how we're learning every day. We're still learning, even years into doing doing a role in mobility. And part of that learning is also teaching and giving back and helping people understand what you've maybe obstacles that you've overcome or lessons learned that you had. That's part of it's really part of the gratification of becoming experienced and understanding a lot about it, is that coaching and helping others grow and being willing to take the time to do that. So it's definitely something that, while I love learning, I also love the giving back part of it. So looking forward to continue to do that.
Thanks, Amy. How about you, Vini?
Oh gosh, I was very fortunate to have some amazing mentors in my few years in mobility, and I still engage them often. I think personally, it's just to inspire and try to influence anybody, corporate or not, to be motivated, to be confident, to be kind of thoughtful and help our mobility industry. I think that's what I like to do. And and I'll just say really quick, and that's why I truly believe in the regional relocation councils. Get involved. I am in way too many. I mean, I'll bring my wife later. She will tell you it's way too many. I wouldn't even say mentor. Mentor, I think it's more like, with a big framework and all of that. I would say be open to share and to learn.
Yep.
And that's why what I like to do, I love connecting people. I think Jodi follows me on social media. I think that's what she was saying. And I even, my way to say thanks to the mobility industry and all of it, I even host huge parties at my own house. So it's the fun things too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see a trip to Portland coming up.
We can only hope.
Already at
right?
Vinny's house.
Absolutely.
Tessa, how about you? I know you've always been giving back to this industry.
Yeah, like Vinny, I've had people that have helped me, and I love the network. I cherish my network. And we do talk. I do reach out. I do ask questions. We share. It's kind of like it's kind of like that by giving, you're going to get so much more back. So I give my time knowing that my network and the people that I speak with, they're going to give me that much more back in the end. So I'm always happy to do that. And plug for the regionals. Love it.
Yes.
The regionals, raise your hand, be involved, come out to those events. They're great events for networking, for learning, for getting to know the industry better.
Definitely. Thank you. And Jodi, how about you?
I think, mentor, the concept of the word mentor, like what Vinny said, it defines a little bit more of a formal relationship. And mentorship doesn't necessarily have to be a formalized plan or a formalized program. It really can be, very informal. It can be 5 minutes with someone that you learn a great deal from in a very short period of time. It can be a 10-year-long relationship where, you share challenges and work together and grow together. It doesn't necessarily also have to be with someone who is more senior and someone who is less senior. It really can also be with compatriots. So like, I do follow Tessa as well. Amy, I'm going to add you to my little stalker list. But yes, Vinny knows I follow him as well on social media. I follow Ben. I follow you, Sandy. These are the things I kind of, even if it's little quick snippets of, what you guys put out there, and I can learn from and I can absorb. And one of the great things that I've loved about my mobility journey is I've been able to see people kind of grow and succeed within mobility and even surpass me. And I love that. And I'm like, go for it, reach for the stars. And I've also seen people grow and end up not staying in mobility. And I'm like a little sad, but at the same time, I completely understand people's passions go to different directions. And so I've been very privileged to just kind of watch a few individuals who have kind of come into mobility new. And I thought they were just fantastic people and just had a lot of talent, and they've kind of gone on and done other things. And that to me is rewarding. Like seeing people be successful is rewarding. And whether they surpass me, and some of them definitely will, that's not the point. It's kind of, I get a vicarious thrill, if you will, over watching people do great things, and I love it. So if I was even a small part of that, I just consider that a huge privilege.
Well, all of you are a large part of that, so thank you for that. So it's been any last thoughts that you have here?
I just love all these people so much, honestly. I appreciate, I could talk for another hour. I got all sorts of questions. But I just really, really, really so much appreciate all of you for being here and being so honest and candid. I think that's what's needed when we're having these conversations, right? A lot of times we tend to gloss over things and speak in these kind of platitudes, but I mean, I love the candor. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there that tuned in and takes an hour out of their day to check out what we're doing and what Sandy's cooking over here. I really, really appreciate all of you out there. Thanks for getting involved in the comments too. We couldn't have a show without y'all. So thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. And just to kind of close it up, in 2 weeks, we'll do part 4, which is our final show. And Ben, again, thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor to be able to bring individuals like this to the show that will it just demonstrates that there's so many good people in this industry and so much knowledge that can be shared. And Amy, to your point, can be learned from all of us, that it's amazing to me. You know, I have a hashtag that says double down on kindness. And that's what this is about. It's doubling down on our industry and giving back and making sure that our industry continues to thrive. So in 2 weeks, we're going to have part 4. And part 4 is a great kind of wrap up. We're going to have some young professionals come on the show and share how informal and formal mentoring has changed their careers and their path and their journey. So it's exciting to wrap it up. And then we'll announce at that show how we'll proceed to come off of Ben's show and basically continue to do some matching of cohorts if you're interested. So if you are, you'll be looking for some forms to fill out, some information that we'll figure out how to do. And bottom line, I can't thank the 4 of you more than it just warms my heart to know that you all said yes when I asked. So thank you for that. And Ben, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. We will not be here Friday, but we will be back in 2 weeks doing this. Can't wait. I may not be on that. I might be in London, and it might be like pub time. So I might have to get some PTO, Sandy. I'm going on vacation.